Hello everybody and welcome to Toitu to You Curator's Corner episode number 36. My name's Sean Brosnan. I'm a curator at Toitu Otago Settlers Museum. I've been telling these little stories about our pioneering life for your entertainment. Well, today's another day, so as promised, I'm going to tell you more of Isabella Buchanan's story. But to get the context, you might want to watch the previous 3 episodes or so, which were all about Squatters Gully, because that's where her story takes place. But first, let's expand the view a little bit and take note of the other families that lived in that little community high up on the hill above Dunedin. As well as the Buchanan family, there were fellow Philip Lang passengers, the McLeans from Neilston in Renfrewshire, and the Calendars from Paisley in the same county. Then there were the Browns, also from Paisley, but who arrived on the Benicia at the end of 1848. A little later, the Faulkners from Edinburgh also settled in Squatters Gully. The McLeans moved on, and their cottage was then taken over by the Macleays, who were from Kirkintilloch, the same hometown as the Buchanans. Now, all of those families had children, with ages ranging from infants born at Squatters Gully itself to teenagers. We've got a great picture of the happy-go-lucky childhood that those kids enjoyed in the beautiful bush setting of the town belt from John Macleay in his 1916 memoir that's been referred to in previous episodes. He describes the bush being thronged with birds. At that stage, they would have included native species like tui, korimako, kereru, tieke, kokako, kaka, and at night, the ruru, the moko, many of which you now have to go to a bird sanctuary to see or to hear. Macleay also notes the crystal clear water that ran down the hill and the streams that fed into the Toitu. So it was a fairly idyllic setting by anyone's standard, and just a brilliant playground for children. But they also had to go to school, of course, and that would have meant a trek down the hill to First Church, the first one just above the beach, which we have previously noted doubled as the first Dunedin school. Now, no doubt, the dozen or more Squatters Gully kids all walked down to school together and then played in the bush and along the streams on the hillside as they walked home at the end of the day. 2 of the fathers from Squatters Gully also had a special connection with the school/church in those early years. First of all, John Faulkner and then John Buchanan had the job of beadle or minister's man at First Church, which meant that they were the caretaker, the handyman, the general factotum for the Reverend Thomas Burns around the church and the school. And another additional task that this role involved in the early 1850s was to keep town time. What was town time? Well, it was a pioneer version of the pips on the radio, on Radio New Zealand, that happened every hour at the top of the hour to help people to synchronise their clocks and watches. Now, the pioneer version of it was achieved with a cannon that was set up atop Church Hill, now called Bell Hill, where First Church is. We actually have that very cannon on display at Toitu. At noon on Saturdays, a shot from the cannon would be fired, and all around Dunedin, people with timepieces would check that they were set to the same time. Now, once a week wasn't probably enough in an era when clocks and watches had to be hand-wound and would run down or go astray pretty frequently. So in due course, the cannon was replaced with a bell, and it was set up on a tower on top of Church Hill, which therefore began to be called Bell Hill thereafter. You can see the tower in this photograph, and we have that bell on display at Toitu as well. Now, the bell was rung at 8 a.m, 12 noon, 1 p.m, and 5 p.m, or the start and stop times of the working day. A bit like a factory hooter, I guess. Sometimes, however, the beadle couldn't be on hand to ring the bell at midday. He might be working somewhere else. And when John Buchanan had the job, he got around that problem by getting his eldest daughter, Isabella, to ring the bell for him. Now, that must have been quite an exciting task for the little girl. It meant she got to carry her father's pocket watch, a very valuable item at the time, and she was also let out of school 5 minutes before the hour. She walked up Dowling Street, past Dr. Manning's house, which undoubtedly was an adventure all of its own, and then took a path up through the scrub and the flax to the bell tower atop the hill. We know this story from her younger sister Jeannie, who provided some memories to the Otago Daily Times for its issue marking Otago's anniversary day, the 23rd of March, in 1923. By then, Jeannie was in her 70s and able to look back on a long and eventful life. Sadly, that had not been the case for Isabella. She fell victim to scarlet fever soon after her 20th birthday, which she caught while nursing one of the neighbour's children at Squatters Gully in October 1864. Now, scarlet fever was only one of a number of infectious diseases that were then common in Dunedin, because the town, which had been an idyllic spot of bush and crystal clear water in 1848, had descended only 16 years later into a hellhole of filth and contaminated watercourses. An ODT editorial shortly before Isabella's death described what Dunedin was experiencing as a carnival of death, and noted that the first half of 1864 had seen a 64% increase in deaths from the same period a year before. In a town with as yet few old people in it, it was the young and especially children who were falling victim to the diseases. Poor Isabella Buchanan's untimely end was a consequence of her neighbourly kindness, putting herself in harm's way to care for the sick, just like so many heroic healthcare workers around the world have been doing during the present pandemic. Dunedin's mortality rate of 34 per 1,000 people in 1864 was a shocking development for what had been a pristine pioneer settlement just a few years earlier. And it's a reminder to us of how much premature death, especially of children, was a frequent experience for our pioneer forebears. Now, I hope you found that story interesting, if not enjoyable. And if you did, you might like to subscribe to this channel and watch out for future episodes.